Well, good evening and welcome to OffPlanet Radio Live. I'm Randy Maugans with Chris Holly. She will be here with us in a second. And it is Friday night, November the 1st, 2013. And under very clear, very cool autumnal skies here in the East Coast of the United States. And we have our guest with us tonight, Zen Benefiel from ufologypress.com, and we're going to be talking a pretty wide range of subjects tonight, I believe. And we're kind of winding down the year here. There's changes coming. I'll just say this right up front. We're probably looking at the end of the year where we're going to make some new changes in terms of how the show's presented and our activities as well. And as we go through the final couple of weeks here of November and then into December, we'll kind of be doing a transition. So bear with us. I want to say thanks to those who have continued to support us. You people are, as I always like to say, the wind under our wings, because you're the few and you hit the PayPal button or you drop a couple bucks into an envelope. Being donation supported has its rather thin times. The last 6 months have been a little slim on support, but we're okay with that, and we thank you for doing that. And it's been wow, ever since that Hunter moon last month, I felt fragmented. And I'll say tangential because I think that's a word that's going to come up tonight. I feel very nonlinear right now. And that's sometimes the most interesting phase you go through, is when you allow yourself to move out of logical, linear thinking and go into a place where the mind has an opportunity to thread through the abstractions of things. And with that, I want to bring up my co-host from Long Island, New York, Chris Holly. Good evening, Chris. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, you're muted. My bad. You were muted.
Oh, okay. Hello, everybody. It's Chris here with Randy. I hope everybody's good. Randy, I think we've been doing this show long enough, and our listeners have heard this from us before, but I think someone else is on the line with us tonight, as well as our guest. I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, we've got visitors again?
Yes.
Good evening to the National Security Agency, the CIA, FBI, and all the alphabet agencies. We welcome you.
Yes, hello again.
Peel your eyelids back, guys, and listen up, because we're trying to tell you where you should be going. It brings up an interesting subject as well. Our mutual friend Ken Pfeiffer has just been putting out a torrent of information of UFO sightings coming off of his website, and I'm stunned by the pictures that I see, the photographic evidence, and the fact that to this day our government and MUFON have failed to actually peg identifying a UFO as something that really doesn't belong in our skies, at least identifiably by the database of objects that we know about. And so it looks like, Chris, our work's still cut out for us, because most of the world still doesn't understand what's really going on in the skies.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there, Randy. And he has sent photos to us both that are just phenomenal. Why anyone would just continue to question and make excuses and be in denial at this point, I think is a question many of us have to stand back and look at and consider as bizarre as what these UFOs might be in the first place. The way we deal with them and reason out, that we should think nothing about it, to me is crazy.
Wow, I just got a weird sound vibration through my system. Something. Ooh.
I told you that we have visitors.
Yeah.
I could hear them talking again in the background when you were talking.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is these things never show up on the audio recordings we put out. So nobody believes us. It's just like the UFO thing. I understand that the majority of people don't believe they've ever seen a craft. But I also understand a lot of people have, and a lot of people have a cognitive dissonance towards what they allow into their minds through their sense organs, and that's part of the problem as well. Our guest tonight may be able to shed some light on this. He's done significant research. His website is UFO PRSS, that's UFOpress.com. It's interesting because the RSS is actually kind of a play on words there. That's the really simple syndication, which is the means by which our blogs and our podcasts go out over the internet. And putting a P behind it, of course, creates a very interesting acronym. Back to press. We are the press, aren't we? And
we are.
We absolutely are. And we want to welcome Zen Benefiel to the show. Good evening, Zen.
Good evening, Randy and Chris. It's a wonderful time to be here. And how often do we actually look up? You're talking about what's in the skies. How often do we actually look up? Most of the time, if you look at people, you're walking down the street, where are most of them looking?
At their feet or at their telephone? In their hand now. Almost everybody's looking at their hand.
Right. Or if they don't have anything, they don't have a smartphone in their hand or whatever, they're usually looking down at their feet or within, just a few feet in front of them. So how do we get people to look up, meet our eyes, for one, let alone look up into the skies and enjoy the beauty that's there as much as, I don't know that the UFOs don't necessarily belong there. I think they probably belong there more than we do.
Right. I think a better way to term that probably from my side was that they're anomalous to our experience in the present consensus reality.
For many, yes.
For many.
And even those that have been more science, technology, material focused. There's not a lot outside of the box for them. You were talking about nonlinear and getting out of the logic train, kind of disconnecting that train and letting the cars run by themselves. Well, there is a certain amount of logic to nonlinear and non-local experiences. However, you have to have a few of them before you get that.
And I believe that, but I wonder, it's like I said in my intro tonight, Zen, I don't think most people allow those experiences to register.
We don't know how to be quiet enough to listen.
Exactly.
That's the first part of it. We have so much internal dialogue going on. It's like when I was in college, way back, my psychic senses got blown open. I think all of ours do in that 17 to 19-year-old age.
Or earlier.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. But especially, when you're in that first year of college, you're wondering, what you're here for, where you're going, what you're going to do, who you're going to be. And it's magnified because you're under pressure. And in that pressure cooker, if you will, there's a lot of this negative self-talk that goes on because we don't think enough. What happens is that was amazing. Something just disappeared.
Yeah.
I guess we're getting clearer now. So.
Oh, that was really strange. Yeah.
Yes, isn't it though? So
it was.
And you ain't seen nothing yet. So when I was in Carlsberg at an event recently, and my conversation with her was in perfect synchrony with the speaker that was in the room behind us, and at one point I said a word that was immediately echoed by the person on stage, and she looked at me like, whoa, dude. These kinds of things happen when you're in tune, when you're aware, when you stop to smell the roses, so to speak. But anyway, back to the college story. When my senses first got blown open, I became telepathically aware, and usually there's a 4 to 7 foot radius around us. that we're ultra sensitive to when we have our psychic senses opened for the first time or a few times. As I was walking by other students, I would hear this barrage of negative self-talk, and it would always open with the word "you" first of all. So, I always thought it was about me. Everything's about me, right? So at that point, I got freaked. I figured out what the heck was going on. And it wasn't until another friend of mine stopped by and said, "Dude, where you been?" And I told him what I had experienced and how freaked out I was by it. And I was living in the honors dorm, and it was Brainiac anyway. So when your mind's already on steroids, it kind of tends to get really tangential and go off in all kinds of different directions, and really has a hard time coming back to center. Well, how he got me back to center was asking me the question: is that your voice, or is it the voice of others that you're hearing?
Yeah, and the inner dialogue is constant chatter in the background. I know that you have a background in consciousness and meditation, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. One of the things that I've stressed for a lot of years on this show and on another show that I was presently on hiatus that I did for 10 years called The Threshing Floor was to begin reminding people of the necessity to become still, which is what the condition of mind...
It's so important.
Yeah, this condition of mind that you go into in meditation, if it's a theta or delta state, whatever that registers to people, the need to just stop things around you, to stop the chatter, and to go very deep inside yourself, long enough to begin to hear the authentic voice of your connection and your connection to the divine.
Right. And if you practice it enough, a lot of us were introduced to this when we were younger through psychedelics.
Sure.
Because in that place, you get so caught up in just looking and listening because you're thrust into a world that you're unfamiliar with, and you just have to sit back and take it all in. Well, the real world's kind of set up the same way. When you can sit back and take it all in and not be distracted or engaged by it without purposely engaging it by choice, then you're able to really tune into a lot of different things that are around you and become, I think, more fully functional because you're aware, you're a little quieter, you're able to perceive needs, let's say, that come up because it, kind of like you guys are both familiar with the law of one, and the difference is in the service to self or service to others. Well,
right.
The ultimate service to self is service to others in that place of stillness, to where you're available by being quiet and listening. And not only, do you listen and hear, but you perceive on all different kinds of levels once you open up that part of your consciousness that becomes available to the nonlinear and non-local experiences. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And the other side of this is, I think a lot of what we deal with, we do a lot of shows on UFOs, on paranormal, but we always bring the spirituality into it, however people define that. And I differentiate it, from the idea of dogmatic religion. But there's
spirituality to me is just the knowledge that all things are connected.
Yeah,
Right.
Which isn't even religion anymore. It's quantum physics.
Exactly. Quantum physics is proving. This is how science and spirituality are dovetailing, and the two are actually proving each other. And I think any less than that, and we still have questions that need to be answered. Because if we really understand things, the nature of the universe, the natural laws and cycles and rhythms and patterns and mathematics and all of those types of things are all part of our consciousness.
So are we, as a race, slowly creeping toward a greater awareness? Do you sense...
Absolutely.
And especially... I know 2012 was somewhat of a cliche. I hung on to the...
Let me give you, if I may jump in with this. Okay. 2012 was significant in, if you've read Gladwell stuff, the tipping point. Okay?
Right.
Jose Arguelles was a dear friend, and he and I had a conversation years ago talking about the cycles of time and natural law and those types of things. Well, when he first brought out the Mayan calendar back in the 70s, there was some interesting tidbits that he presented about a window of time that began in 87 with the harmonic convergence,
right,
and extends 25 years on the other side of 2012. So there's this 50-year window.
Yes.
So if you look at it from that perspective, and 2012 being the tipping point, we've had a waxing of consciousness over the last 25 years. And if you look at it from that perspective, and you look at all the material, the people, places, and things that have appeared that have been geared to raise awareness of our interconnectivity, not only with each other, but with the cosmos, that information has increased to a point where now we pretty much got it. Okay, so now what do we do with it? And that's the next 25 years where we figure out how to implement our understanding so that we can create harmony among people and planets. And I believe that, in essence, is our goal and what the raising of consciousness ultimately brings us to. Now, are we close to that? Yeah, not really. However, on the scale of planetary development, we're still in a very, a blink of an eye kind of perspective, where this 50-year window is kind of like a blink of the eye, and yet there is tremendous progress. If you look at not just from the spirituality standpoint and from the Mayan calendar and the 2012 thing, but if you look at it from technology and information, now the escalation of information that's been available through the technology age has exponentiated. That the curve of information is almost vertical now, as far as the increase that we have on a daily, hourly, sometimes, moment to moment basis. We're learning new stuff all the time. Well, where is that taking us? What all is involved? Who's all involved? And how far is their reach of involvement? And that's where we enter the extended family area. And I'm getting to the point where I'm reluctant to call them ETs. I don't call them aliens at all, because all my experiences feel like family. Right. And most of the people that I am aware of who have ongoing experiences have the same type of notion, that this feels more like family than it does anything else, even more so than terrestrial families. And for myself, I'm orphaned and adopted, so I've got that disconnect from the terrestrial realm already. And it's been easier for me to adopt and adapt into a greater consciousness and awareness of the possibilities of these things that most of us think are tangential. And what we mean by tangential is that they're off the circle. A tangent, if you look at it from a geometric standpoint, a tangent is a line that touches a circle in one point.
Right.
Okay. So if you've got that, every time you have a tangent, you're exiting that circle at a perpendicular level, if you will.
Right.
So And ultimately, then you come back around, and the circle comes back where I call it. And here's the nonlinear and non-local stuff coming in now. We bounce around quite a bit. What happens is that in this tangential place, we often have bits and pieces of our history on the planet, events, thoughts, meetings, people, places, and things that are put into our paths that aren't necessarily in a sequential order, but when we get to a place where there's a certain experience that we have, all of a sudden everything feels like it's brought back together and it's put in line to where it's all in a logical, common sense or sense made common viewpoint.
One of the things that you kind of punched there, and I want to go back to it because for me it's a big subject, is this idea of linear time. To me, I understand that I live in a time stream. I call it a time domain because I think it's connected to our three-dimensional experience being the fourth dimension. That said, even though I live in that domain, I'm very asynchronous in a lot of aspects of my life, even in terms of moment-by-moment living. I don't think asynchronously. I have to work in order to stay in the time constraints of 3D life. And I'm wondering what your take on that is, because most people who have had paranormal, who have had contact experiences, tend to have a very different viewpoint of time than people who have not yet recognized their own contact with other dimensions.
Sure, absolutely. Let me address that from several different vantage points. The first one, let's start. By chance, are you a musician?
I am.
Okay. So, Chris, how about you?
No, I'm not.
All right.
She does tap dance marvelously.
Yeah, but you love to listen. Okay. So, Randy, you know that when you're in a jam where you're just connecting and you're conversing with the other musicians, you lose time. Right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It just disappears. Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote a book called Flow.
I'm very familiar with this book. This is one of my core texts. Yes.
Okay, cool. I love it. The book is called Flow. The experience, or what's the
optimal experience? I think it's optimal.
Yes, but there's something right before optimal experience. But anyway, he mentions the same thing. Flow is like a jazz quartet that's in that place where everybody just lets go. Things happen. You lose time. You lose the ego. You just participate, and everything works magically in some cases because you've prepared it to do so. You've practiced. You know your scales. You know your rhythms. You know your patterns. I'm a drummer. I'm guessing you're a guitarist. So there's all these kinds of things that sync up. Okay. Now that's in local space. My experience, not only with the contact experiences, but as a teenager, I had what many people call a near-death experience. Actually, was asked to die for what I believed in, or if I was willing to. Okay, and it was kind of an answer to a prayer that I had made the week before, where I had actually said, Father, I want to know what truth is, and I'm willing to give up my life if necessary to do so. So I got called on it, and when I did, when I finally let go, I left my body, went into the light, experienced in what seemed to be a long time, hours and hours and hours of conversation and experience and visualizations and all kinds of stuff. And it turned out to be 2.5 minutes for all of it to happen. And the reason I knew that was because I was listening to an album at the time when it happened. From where the guitar riff started and I left my body to where the song ended and I came back. So, and yet that coincides with the types of contactee experiences when you leave your body and you go into this other realm. Sometimes even you can just close your eyes for a moment and you have a daydream and you have this experience that's hours or weeks or months long, and it's almost in the blink of an eye where, you close your eyes, you're gone for a few seconds, you have this experience, you come back and you open your eyes up and you go, wow, how can I share that? How can I explain that? Let alone how can I relate to it, and how does it integrate into my daily 3D experience? And all of it does. We just don't have that faculty yet where we recognize that, we're truly cosmic consciousness condensed into physical form that we call bodies. And so we have this waking consciousness that is just a really thin slice of the complete consciousness that we really are. And that's part of what we're finding out. This is part of what the star families, if you will, are families from elsewhere, are attempting to show to us, not only with the contact experience, but with the crop circles.
Yeah.
That's another kind of communication that is just jam-packed with information, with mathematical information. Bear Cloud, I don't know if you're familiar with him, the guy from Sedona. I met him back in the early aughts. He and I spoke at an event in Scottsdale, and he had broken down several of the crop circles into the mathematical components that were presented in them. And, the language there is just phenomenal. It's like, what it was, August of 2002, I think, was the one that, and I forget exactly where it was, but it was the circle or the formation, I guess, rather than the circle of the zeta head with the binary disk next to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, and then I forget the actual time frame, but from the time that we sent that first signal out from Arecibo to the time that there was a crop formation right next to a radio telescope in England that mimicked that same data that was sent out, with slight differences in that it reflected the race that sent it back to us. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I remember. I actually saw a video on this several years ago.
So there's all of this information and data that's right in front of us. And what I find in ufology is that people are so fragmented, they're not able to step back and take a big picture view and look at all the details and see how it all fits together. They take one aspect of it and they take a tangent and they get lost for a lifetime.
I think those crop circles, whatever the source of those are, and I've had what I'll just call spirited debates with people over them. It doesn't matter what the source was. Whatever created them was extremely intelligent and extremely tapped into something. I've even submitted the idea.
Non-destructive.
Non-destructive. Using a form of energy that we can't account for because of the way the blades of grain within those crop circles is bent. It's not been broken. It's not been burned. It's simply bent.
And there's no cellular damage whatsoever.
Yeah, there's very strange things going on there. There's people that have gone into those crop circles and gone into altered states, much like you would get with a DMT experience, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a reflection of a consciousness that exists within our realm. And whatever the source of them are, they reflect us as well. Is that, would you agree with that they reflect our ability now to be able to process something that's extraordinary?
And I would take it to the point where they're asking us to reflect them. Because in our awareness, we are so, and I'll use this term loosely, butt puckered. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. Tight ass would be another way of saying it.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, when we're presented with information beyond our scope of experience, what's the first thing we do? We clamp down. We close our energy. And we generally hold our breath. So when we experience a shift in energy, especially, and a lot of these other intelligences, their vibratory rates, their the energy that they carry, let's say, when they show up, if they don't step it down, it's like getting hit with a freight train of energy.
Yeah.
And when that happens, if we're not prepared for that sufficiently, we freak out. And that's a normal fight or flight response of an unprepared, unconditioned, undisciplined behavior. Well, that's a child.
But Zen, my whole was not a problem. My fear, my concern, I don't know how I could put it, is that people like you and I and Randy and the people listening to us, we all have been able to approach these subjects and think about them because of the very nature of our being interested in things considered unknown or just not understood, and the need and want
into it.
Right, whatever, they are here because they understand there's more to know. But I'm kind of, as I age, a little I don't know if it's that we've, as a mass society, been taught not to think. And I also had, an experience when I went to my university, and one of the professors really put me in my place very early on. In fact, he did it to all of us in the class. We were very arrogant and full of ourselves, but very closed down, and thought we, knew everything. And he just did something to us and made us all look like fools. And when he had our attention, because we all had been humiliated and made fools of, he then taught us what he called how, the way of life is to learn how to think. And his problem with, and he may have been way ahead of his time because this was long ago, he said, is that none of us, no humans, seem to know how to think. He said, thinking, he said, is a cave. He said, and real thinking is a bottomless pit of a cave. He said,
Ooh.
we think 3 inches into the cave, and then we're done. He said, and there is nothing that can be figured out like that. And then he went on and explained how to quiet yourself, learn the art of focusing, question everything, really investigate topics. He said, when you think out an opinion in life, it should hurt. The thinking should be so intense, it hurts. And I love this man because he set me straight, he set me right, and I stayed with that my entire life.
What a godsend.
Yeah, and to be able to focus yourself. And then he gave a very, very quick and easy method for all of us to use, is when you're in a situation, instead of jumping for that 3 inches of quick 3-minute thinking before you, listen to your friend's one opinion and say, yeah, that's it. And when I look at it now, I mean, political opinions and things across the board in life that are extremely important are made on these 3-minute, 3-inch thinking, thoughts instead of real thinking, really focusing. He said, picture yourself that there's chaos going on in a small town, and before you jump in and take sides or help, You go up on the little hill above the town, sit in a tree, and look down and just watch what's going on with complete silence in your soul and focus on the situation before you even start to make opinions or decide what's actually happening. And
Right.
if you can conquer that, you really have a foot up in life. But my problem is,
Go ahead.
my problem is the mass of society did not get those lessons, especially when they were young, and don't have the ability to do what we all have come to in one way or another to learn, that gets us to the point where we can even discuss or think about the subjects we're talking about tonight. And I'm starting to wonder, is there a reason for that? Is it that only so many really are meant to go forward with this knowledge and not the masses? Or we just have our work cut out and it's going to be a very, very long time before we can spread out these ways of thinking and living and letting all this other stuff in to those who seem incapable of doing it?
Right. You brought up several points. Hopefully I can get them all because I didn't write them down. Let's see how good my memory is. First of all, one of the things that your professor brought up, I find even more so with Sri Aurobindo's work, and that is that he recommended that in order to find your center, that you must stand in the middle of chaos.
Right.
And when you do that and you can stand in the middle, I actually got quite good at it. I've been an event organizer and doing huge events that draw 250,000 people in one night. So in those kinds of situations, when you have to make stuff happen, you've got to really be centered and able to make decisions, snap decisions that stuff needs to get done right now, and you can't be intimidated by the stuff. Mm-hmm. And, over time, initially, I got to say, it's a little overwhelming, but once you get used to the behavior, it's much easier to perform. Now, the other thing that you mentioned was that, some of the techniques, one of them that I use is just putting your fingertips together and feeling your heartbeat in your fingertips. When you can quiet yourself to feel your heartbeat in your fingertips, then you're out of your head. You're not thinking, you're feeling. And the more opportunity you get to do that, and it doesn't take long. Nobody has to know. You can sit there all by yourself in the middle of a crowd or a school or work or whatever, and it only takes a few seconds to tune into that. The thing is, you have to remember to do that. Now, on the level of thinking, it's interesting that way back when, the Greeks had a word, and it was Thetan, Thetan, and it actually means thinker. Well, if you're kind of getting where I'm going, God has a list. Oh, Thetan, you silly fool. That's actually where our word Satan comes from. It was recognized early on that there could be a wedge driven because they didn't want people to think. So the people that thought became heretics because they questioned the truth and were not able to be managed by the... So they
whoever wanted to manage it. Yeah.
Exactly. So they created a fictitious enemy, and the truth, then you found yourself at the end of a spear or on a cross or, whatever untimely death that they choose or chose for you. Now we have the opportunity to question everything, and especially with Google, you can plug a question in and find out all kinds of information. The difficult thing is to discern the truth and to figure out ways to, I'll use a Robert Heinlein term, grok what the truth is.
I love it.
Which means how you cognate, how you even metacognate, which means to fully understand with all the senses you have at your disposal what the truth is. Now, I have found, and I'm sure that you have as well, that the truth has a certain resonance to it. It just feels right. You don't necessarily understand why, but there's a certain sense of, yeah. Okay? So oftentimes what I find, and especially in ufology, and even more so in the conspiratorialist realms, is there's all of these distractions, all of these things that are trying to get you to think about this or that or the other thing, and they take you out of center with all of these possibilities of, oh, all this stuff is impeding your freedom. It's damaging your health. It's controlling your mind. It's, all of this bullshit that's in the public domain, so to speak, that we don't have the filter skills built in to do justice for our own sanity. Okay. Now, when I was younger, and I had that white light experience I was telling you about, I went and told my parents. They thought I was on drugs. They sent me to a psychiatrist. After the third visit, he says, I got to tell you, you're not crazy. You've had what I would call a spiritual awakening. Why so young? I'm not sure. Most people don't have it until their mid-40s, if they ever do. And that, my advice to you is, for the time being at least, keep your mouth shut. Don't talk to adults about it, because they're not going to understand what you're talking about, and they'll want to put you away. Best advice I ever had. Did I listen to it? Not really. But what I found now, I'm almost 60. And as I look back and I watch the periods of life and who I was in touch with and the things that were going on, and it's rare that a person has the opportunity when they're younger to experience and explore. I think that has to do with the parental setup, that they make those kinds of things available and even encourage a child to explore themselves. As one gets older, we kind of don't have a choice. We have to figure out, especially after your children are raised. I've got 4 kids. I've got 8 grandkids now. Once you get those kids raised and they're gone, then there's a gap. Okay, what do I do with my life? Where do I go? Who am I now? And what can I do? Or, where is my passion now that my children are gone? So there's all those kinds of opportunities that we have of exploring ourselves, and that's where that, the mid-40s comes in, because that's usually when we become empty nesters. Right?
I'm wondering if you ever read the book Cosmic Consciousness by Richard Maurice Buck.
No, that's one I haven't.
Okay, that's a book that came out, I think this was written in the 30s, and Buck basically detailed famous figures through history, everybody from Jesus Christ to St. Paul to Da Vinci to Spinoza, all of these well-known, Emerson was another one that he detailed, but he basically spelled out the emergence of this cosmic consciousness. He pegged the age at somewhere in the mid-30s then, but he said that it was very rare. In fact, I think statistically he said it was 1 in tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that ever even approached this particular type of experience of what we're talking about, which is white light or enlightenment type experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, I have to say, especially because it happened to me. It wasn't something that I necessarily anticipated, expected. Obviously, I was looking for something because I prayed about knowing truth. So there was something within me that had that inclination, but I had no idea what was going to happen as a result of that. What I found was that because it happened, it gave me a completely different set of questions about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
I'm going to take this in a slightly different place. We're going to take a break in a few minutes, too, by the way, Zen. But before we go to break, one of the listeners in our chat room asked if you would talk a little bit about some of your contact experiences. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to do that on the other side?
I'm fine with however works for you, Randy.
Yeah,
this is your show.
Well, I'm just thinking, people were
Since
curious about
you've got somebody asking,
yeah,
why not?
Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, all right, let's go. Well, to begin with, as I said before, I was orphaned and adopted. Right after my parents told me that I was adopted, that was just after my 5th birthday, I had a lot of questions about why and who my parents really were and all that kind of stuff. Well, there was one evening where I happened to be in a particular moment, and I don't know what I was thinking about right before it happened, but I heard this voice, this big, booming, deep voice inside my head say, "Hey, you." And, so I answered to "Hey, you." Literally. I didn't understand it at the time. I spun around, thought that it was loud enough that I didn't realize at that moment that it was just inside my head. I thought it was loud enough that my mother should have heard it. Turned out she didn't. A couple of years later, I started having out-of-body experiences and went through that sensation of having to deal with, am I dying? As you leave your body, that's a question that goes through all of our minds. And then you have to breathe and let go and realize, no, I'm not. I'm just finding another degree of freedom. And so then about a year after those experiences started, or actually had moved into a new house that my parents had built, and I would wake up in my bedroom, middle of the night. I would be up in the corner of my bedroom looking at my physical body laying in bed. I would watch my physical body get out of bed, open my window, climb out, walk across the neighbor's yard, climb a fence that surrounded a field. I lived in rural Indiana. Walked out into the middle of this field, and as I was walking out into the field, I would rise up into this orange cigar-shaped cloud. Because I'd look up, and when it first happened, I looked up to see where I was going, and this thing had to have been, I don't know, maybe even a mile long. It was huge. And as I would reach the perimeter, the part of me that was watching became one with the physical body, and I would go into the cloud. Then I'd wake up in bed the next morning, couldn't wait to go back. Now, this happened, I'm guessing, at least a couple of times a month for about a 2-year period. Some days I would wake up with a bloody nose or remnants of a bloody nose. Didn't really think about it at the time until a decade and a half later. I was getting ready to move to Phoenix, and I was walking through a metaphysical bookstore in Muncie, Indiana, and this book fell off a shelf, opened up on the floor. I walk over. There's nobody else around. Okay, I walk over and I pick the book up, and it's Ruth Montgomery's Strangers Among Us. And so I opened it up or turned it over, and the first paragraph that my eyes were drawn towards basically said the most common UFO contactee experience in the Midwest in the late 50s and early 60s was the orange cigar-shaped cloud. And I didn't know what to do. There was nobody else around. What do you do? So it was like a domino effect. All of a sudden, a lot of things that I'd experienced made sense, but it also took me to a new level of realization of, oh shit, that's what's happened, and it didn't, like I say, it was such a cool experience during the time. I still wasn't afraid. But it made me realize that, oh wow, something really that something cool really did happen. Now, years later, when I was in Phoenix, I had some questions. I was producing and hosting a television show during this period, and I had had some deeper questions about who I was, and this was after I'd gone through a divorce and I'd left the corporate world. I'd been working for an aerospace company as a production control coordinator for a number of years, and I had questioned myself as far as who am I? Actually, literal question came one night. I was sitting with a friend of mine in front of my guest house. He was renting it at the time, and our conversation felt quiet. It was a full moon. We'd been to a meditation earlier in the evening, and we got quiet. I closed my eyes. I went inside, and I asked the question, who am I? And because I was in the throes of a divorce and problems at work, and just, my life was not fun at that time. So I was really questioning things. And as soon as I asked the question, who am I heard his chair move. I opened my eyes up, turned to look at him. He's looking directly into my eyes, and the first words out of his mouth, "You are Zendor." Now, I hadn't said a word, but I had asked the question, who am I? So, that kind of connectivity was just a little bizarre. There were some other things that happened, but back to I wanted to kind of set up how this next experience happened. Over the next couple of years, I learned a lot about the Ashtar Command and Ashtar and Athena, and supposedly I am connected with them at a very intimate level, which also made a lot of sense, but I still wasn't sure how to deal with it all. Well, so I'm laying in bed one night, and I'd been wondering about how to really connect further, and what all this was about, and if it was really real. And all of a sudden, this particular night, I wake up laughing on a steel gurney with electrodes lining my sphincter and 3 tall zetas pushed back against the wall as I come to on this gurney. And I sit up and I start pulling these electrodes out. And I'm kind of embarrassed because, here I am naked with electrodes in my butt. And I'm like, come on, guys, what are you doing? And I start pulling these things out, and I get to the last one. There's probably a dozen, I'm guessing. But I get to the last one, and I feel a slight sting. And with the sting, my eyes open again, kind of like Inception, where it's got the different levels of waking. So I open my eyes up, and I'm back in bed again. I'm like, shit, I want to go back, because here's a real life, conscious experience I was having of actually seeing my handlers, so to speak, and being in that place with them with no fear, and actually having a chance to have a conversation, at least. And so I close my eyes with all my might, I try to go back. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I do. Unfortunately, I don't make it back, but I do run into this humanoid-looking character that had a male voice, and he says to me, next time just relax. We're just trying to tune you up so we can communicate more easily. Well, what made sense at that moment was the fact that for some unknown reason, I had been studying the nervous system with my girlfriend the week before. She was studying for an anatomy test. She was training to be a massage therapist. And it just so happened that one of the things that we had touched on was the perineum nerve, which ends in the sphincter. And it's the only nerve in the body that's directly connected to the central nervous system, to the spine. So if you were a race of intelligent beings that was attempting semi-non-invasively. Granted that this gives the whole anal probe a completely new perspective. But if you're going to use your technology to adjust the nervous system of a race that you were attempting to elevate to a degree, what would you do, or how would you do it? Well, it would seem like the most easy way would be to link up through the sphincter, knowing all of those things now, which most of us, we don't know enough of our own anatomy or our body. We don't pay attention to the little vibrations or anything that goes on in our body. We're usually not any further into our body than our heads.
Well, you did illuminate, at least for me, this idea. The anal probing thing was disturbing to me, and that actually at least gives us an anatomical anchor, because I'm thinking, what the hell do they want with my ass? I mean...
Right. And, that's a really logical question. And that's the one thing that I found is consistent with all of the people that feel like they have been abducted. That's one of the things that appears to be the most consistent throughout all of those experiences. Well, the perineum, when you tie into that nerve, it can give you all kinds of sensations, including orgasms.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a whole proclivity towards that, as we well know, in human sexuality.
Right. So from a scientific standpoint, it makes one heck of a lot of sense that this is one of the ways that they would go about helping us to adjust our energy. And I just happened to be in a place, in a space, at that point in time, this was 1991, that I was able to grok what that whole thing was about. And I've shared it since then, but, unless you're ready to hear something, unless you're asking questions that's an answer to, it's like trying to teach kids. I was a teacher for a number of years, high school and even some college. If a student is not asking the right question and you're trying to give them an answer, it just doesn't connect. Same thing with a kid. You're trying to raise a kid. If they're not asking a question that you're trying to give them an answer to without them asking the question, they're not going to get it. It's not going to make any sense. And we're about trying to make sense common.
And such is the state of the human condition. I think we may have a few other questions to talk about on the other side of the break, maybe relating to abduction and some of the things that you're posting on your website. We've got a whole big, long, tangential stream of information we can go through, Zen. We're going to take a break at this point. It'd be about 7 or 8 minutes. And
I just thought we were going to have an hour. If we're going to have more, that's stupid.
I think we can go a little longer, and we'll do that on the other side of OffPlanet Radio Live. We'll be right back in about 7 minutes. That's our usual break, and we'll be
time for another cup of coffee.
Absolutely, we'll be right back.